Good evening, and welcome to the 2022 Pueblo City County Library District Booklovers Ball. I'm Nick Potter, Director of Community Relations and Development for the Pueblo City County Library District, and it is my pleasure to welcome you this evening. Tonight, we are broadcasting live from the Robert Hogue Rawlings Public Library. If you have not visited the main branch of the Pueblo City County Library District recently, you are in for a shock, because it is undergoing a $12.5 million renovation. Construction will wrap up at the end of 2022, so be sure to come to the library soon to see all of the amazing things this renovated facility has to offer. This is the third year that we have held the Booklovers Ball as a virtual event. Next year, we are excited to host you in our new Riles Grand Event Space and see everyone in person. While we are in a virtual setting again this year, we aim to create this Booklovers Ball as a fun, interactive, virtual event. Year's Booklovers Ball provided each of you with some materials to create a great at-home event and spur healthy mental wellness practices. I hope you have poured your tea, your copy of The Four Winds is in hand, and you have your dessert plated and ready to enjoy. The Booklovers Ball viewing kits were designed to promote healthy mental wellness activities and habits. We are now going to go live to my normal co-host, Andrea Aragon. Andrea is in our living room studio set this evening, and she has the arduous task of testing all of the items in our Booklovers Ball viewing kits. Andrea, how's everything going this evening?
It's getting better, Nick. I had a rough week. Halloween was kind of a bit of a disaster, but it's getting better now that I have my tea from my Booklovers Ball kit.
Oh, good. I'm so happy that we have you here this evening and that we can provide you some things from our kits that help your week to be a little bit better.
Yes. How did you know I needed this? It's been stressful, but I'm so glad to be here with you and everybody tonight.
I mean, I know Halloween's always a little stressful in your household. What can we do to help you to process this week?
I don't know. What do you suggest? I'm at a loss.
Okay. It sounds kind of like you might be spinning a little bit with what's going on. So, there's a thing called a feelings wheel. Why don't you grab that?
Okay, and that's in the kit, so everybody has that. So they can pull this out too, and whatever they're feeling, they can kind of check it out here.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so what do I do?
So start in the middle and find the feeling that most identifies with the way that you're feeling now.
Okay, I am not feeling scared. I'm feeling mad.
Yeah.
Frustrated.
Okay. Is frustration? What's the next level from that?
Well, I mean, there's a lot. There's frustrated, irritated would be a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, my husband got into all the Halloween candy and ate it all.
Oh.
So then I had to make a mad rush, and Halloween's my big favorite holiday, and I just wasn't able to do all that I wanted to do for it. So I got really annoyed.
Yeah.
First world problems.
So you're frustrated.
I'm
you're
frustrated.
Annoyed.
Yes. It's Friday.
You know the problem. You know what you're dealing with.
So what?
So maybe let's set that down. We've identified your feeling.
Okay.
Grab that calming spray.
Oh, calming spray. And this is in the kit too.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of different, let's see. Or did we just spray it in the air?
Yep. Yeah.
Kiwi. What else is in this?
Cucumber.
Oh, yeah. And did you actually make these here?
We did make.
That's amazing. Wow. This library knows no bounds when it comes to customer service. I love it.
Yeah. So then the next thing to grab are the gratitude cards. Let's see if those can help.
Gratitude cards. And these are also in the kit, right? Okay. And how to use the gratitude card.
So why don't you read the first one? And it'll give you a good prompt on how to deal with what you're going through right now. Okay. So this one talks about emotions being colors. And if the feeling or emotion was a color, what color would it be? Okay.
I would say, red with some oranges and yellows. And
Fiery.
Fiery. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like this beautiful fire.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if it had a shape, what would it be?
Candy bar.
Okay. Yeah.
So
clench onto that candy bar.
lots of kids went with that candy bar due to my husband's selfishness in eating all the candy.
And what does the next card say?
Oh, this is good. Release. That's kind of hard sometimes to release things that bug you.
Yeah.
So this says, listen for the moments when judgment rears its head. Acknowledge these moments and thoughts and let the judgment pass by with recognition. Okay.
Yeah. So somewhat of forgiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Okay. What about the
This
what does
happens.
the next one say?
Okay. This one says eat well. So give yourself some space around each meal to enjoy your own food. And so speaking of food, there's food in the kit, right?
Yes, everyone has a dessert.
Oh, yeah. I know that dessert's always, I better hide this though. It might get eaten. But yeah, this looks delicious.
But save that card for your husband. I think it sounds like he might eat well peas.
Okay. Yeah, very good.
So
Very good.
you kind of processed this. So how do you feel now?
I feel better.
Yeah.
I feel more calm.
Uh-huh.
There's some really wonderful tea, I know, also in the kit. And again, perfect for an autumn evening. And it comes with this glass with a quote from the Four Winds book, which is why we're here.
Absolutely.
Right? And to celebrate Kristin Hannah, it says, love is what remains when everything else is gone, like the candy bars. I better remember that. Right?
Yes.
Okay. Let me try this tea. It's good.
Good.
And I love the little sticks.
So I guess what I would recommend for you the rest of this evening to utilize the kits all the way is to grab your daily gratitude journal that we've provided in the kits.
Okay.
Journal about your experience this evening and what you've learned from this experience. And once you're relaxed and you're calm, maybe brew yourself another cup of tea and grab the Four Winds as a copy and read yourself to sleep tonight.
Yeah. This book is amazing. I'm so glad that All Pueblo Reads is tackling this book and everything that it means. And I think we can all learn from it. Definitely. There's pieces, talks so much about resilience and overcoming. We all seem like we've tried to overcome the pandemic and the economy and all these things that are plaguing us. It can be a bit overwhelming. Like there's a lot of change going on right now.
Absolutely.
And I think it helps to see how other people handle that. And I think it's good. You go into someone else's mind and be there and hopefully take some pieces from them.
So how would you rate this kit? How did it help you this evening?
I love this kit. This kit could be used for days on end. You've got calming tea, great for a fall evening, a winter evening. You've got acknowledging your feelings, your stress, your anger, your frustration. But yes, also remembering gratitude. There's food, that is always helpful. There's some cool, squishy stuff that helps take care of your stress. And I like it. It's I feel pampered now.
Oh, good. Well, thank you so much for going through the arduous task of testing all of these.
Oh, tough work, but I'm always here for you and the library. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, and I hope you all enjoyed this book. Thanks for having me.
Andrea, thank you for your thorough and comprehensive report. These kits are meant as a fun way to enjoy your evening and, at the same time, provide you all with tools to develop healthy mental practices. I hope everyone at home is enjoying and benefiting from their kit as much as Andrea. I also hope everyone at home understands that gooey stuff is a technical term for kinetic sand that you can use as a stress ball. Please do not put it in your bath this evening. It will not bode well. So after you've visited the event website and clicked the play button, you are ready to view and enjoy this evening's program. There are no additional steps needed to enjoy this evening's program. However, here are a couple of notes so you can fully enjoy tonight's virtual event. You can pause the live program at any point in the event. Just click the pause icon on the bottom left of the screen. You can also submit questions or comments to the author. If you have a YouTube account, simply add a comment. If you do not have a YouTube account, you can enter your questions on the event webpage itself. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the 2022 All Pueblo Reads Booklovers Ball. Tonight, we celebrate literacy and lifelong learning. The Booklovers Ball and author presentation are a culmination of events as part of All Pueblo Reads. This year's All Pueblo Reads hosted more than 70 events, both in person and in a virtual setting. The Pueblo Library District works to develop an All Pueblo Reads that reflects our needs currently and provided programming and resources that promote healthy mental wellness activities. The mental wellness kits you all received as part of this program is a continuation of our work to provide resources and tools to practice healthy mental wellness. The mission of All Pueblo Reads is to get everyone in Pueblo County reading and discussing one book at the same time. The 2022 All Pueblo Reads book selection is The Four Winds by Kristin Hannah. Miss Hannah is joining us this evening so we can have a conversation about her award-winning novel. The Four Winds is an indelible portrait of America and the American dream set during a dark period of our history, the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression. The themes of gratitude and perseverance during difficult times made this book a perfect choice when selecting a book that displayed the need for healthy mental health practices. It is the story of a family search for a better life during unprecedented times. This is a novel about a country in crisis, at war with itself. It is a novel about our hubris, about people displaced, and how they are treated in tough times. It's about devastating climate change that was partially of our own making. This event is a fundraiser for the Pueblo Library Foundation and allows the library to further deliver its mission to the community. This evening is possible because of library supporters like you and our generous All Pueblo Reads and Booklovers Ball sponsors. Allow me to thank the generous individuals and businesses that supported the 2020 All Pueblo Reads and Booklovers Ball. At the diamond level, the National Endowment for the Arts Big Read Program, Friends of the Pueblo Library, Black Hills Energy, H.W. Houston Construction, and Health Colorado. Sponsors at the gold level include Pueblo Community College and Bank of the San Juans. Sponsors at the silver level include Benefits Broker, HBM Architects LLC, In Bank, Ken and Gayla White Family Foundation, Pueblo Kiwanis Foundation, Solid Earth Civil Constructors, Inc., Credit Union of Colorado, Goal High School, and Pueblo Community Health Center. Sponsors at the bronze level, Anderson Mason Dell, Angelus Chapel Mortuaries, A New Leaf Therapy, New Image Drywall, LLC, Pueblo Mall, Royal Electrical Services, and Vectra Bank, Colorado. Thank you to our generous sponsors. You have already made this evening a great success. Thank you. I would be remiss if I did not highlight the generous gift from our author this evening. Thanks to Kristin Hannah and her incredible generosity, PCCLD was able to provide more than 1,600 copies of her books to our community. This is an unprecedented donation by an All Pueblo Reads author. From the Pueblo City County Library District and the Pueblo community, I wish to extend a huge thank you to Ms. Kristin Hannah. Tonight we are here to celebrate the Pueblo City County Library District. On September 30th, 2022, the Pueblo City County Library District Board of Trustees appointed Ms. Sherry Baca as Executive Director. Sherry was chosen by a unanimous vote and is the first Hispanic woman to serve as the Library District's Executive Director and Chief Librarian. Sherry brings a warmth and energy to this position, and we are so excited to see what heights she takes our already fantastic library district to. I would like to welcome Sherry to the event to provide an address about the state and future of the library in our community. Sherry?
Hello, and thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you for participating in the 2022 All Pueblo Reads program. All Pueblo Reads is a community-wide literary program which is 18 years strong this year. This year, the Pueblo City County Library District is proud to bring you the literary works of Kristin Hannah, Alicia Ortego, and Ross Gay. I am Sherry Baca, and I was recently named the Executive Director of the Pueblo City County Library District. This new role is an exciting opportunity for me to help shape the public library and to help lead our wonderful staff to continue to provide excellent library materials, services, and library spaces. Many things about All Pueblo Reads is remarkable this year. Author Kristin Hannah has gifted the library $20,000 to bring her books to the readers of Pueblo, Colorado. PCCLD was named a recipient of the National Endowment for the Arts Big Read Grant, and Health Colorado sponsored and partnered with PCCLD to create mental wellness story times and provide copies of Alicia Ortego's My Superpower Is series, featuring mental wellness and topics for children. This year's All Pueblo Reads theme focuses on mental wellness. All of us from every age group are enjoying the wonderful storytelling in all of the reading choices this year. All Pueblo Reads invites our community to read the same book and enjoy over 70 library programs and events during the month of October, with the goal of generating discussion that crosses cultural, generational, and socioeconomic lines. All Pueblo Reads is a fantastic program that invites our community to collaborate and celebrate reading. The future of the Pueblo Library is promising and bright. All Pueblo Reads is not the only activity that we have accomplished at the library this year. We have nearly completed the $12.5 million renovation of the Rawlings Library. The Rawlings renovation project refreshes the interior of this magnificent building and which serves as a beacon of learning in the Pueblo community. We invite you to visit the Rawlings Library, have a warm beverage at PJ's Coffee, enjoy our new layout of library materials, and visit the colorful and fun children's area. We have new collections of books that we are very proud of, collections sponsored by the Pueblo chapter of the NAACP and the Arc of Pueblo. Reading Pays, Pueblo's $1 million reading challenge, and the summer reading program of 2022 have come to a successful completion with over 8,000 children enjoying reading over the summer, and many of them earning $100 if they checked out 10 books and turned in a reading report to the library. These programs encourage youth to find fun in reading and enjoy the new things one can find and experience in visiting a library. Without a doubt, the continued success of these programs this year have positively impacted the kids and families in Pueblo. We want to sincerely thank the City of Pueblo and the County of Pueblo for jointly funding Reading Pays again for a second consecutive year. I want to assure you that PCCLD is continually active, ensuring that Pueblo County has the best possible public library experience. Through continual improvement to our facilities, community services, and materials, we aim to serve our community in an impactful and vital way. Programs like Reading Pays and All Pueblo Reads serve as a great method to show our community members that reading can be fun, impactful, and life-changing. I want to thank our sponsors of this year's All Pueblo Reads program. It is through their support that we are able to bring this reading program to our community. I also want to thank everyone here for participating in All Pueblo Reads. Learning and discovering new stories and places and placing importance on mental health and well-being is so important. It is our wish to you that the rest of 2022 will bring blessings and other opportunities for discovery, learning, and reading. We invite you to visit a public library in your neighborhood. Library staff are ready to welcome you warmly at any Pueblo City County Library location. Thank you so much and enjoy the remainder of All Pueblo Reads.
Thank you, Sherry. Your excitement and advocacy for Pueblo and its public library are apparent and infectious. Thank you for your work to ensure that PCCLD thrives and provides Pueblo County with the best possible public library experience now and into the future. Now for our featured presentation. Each year, PCCLD, through the All Pueblo Reads project, features a piece of literature and brings an author to promote dialogue across cultural, generational, and socioeconomic lines. This year is the 18th year of All Pueblo Reads. This year, All Pueblo Reads is part of the NEA Big Read program. The NEA Big Read is a program of the National Endowment for the Arts in partnership with Arts Midwest. The selected book for 2022 is The Four Winds by Kristin Hannah. We are pleased to virtually host Miss Hannah and look forward to hearing from her and receiving insights into her literature. Kristin Hannah is an award-winning and best-selling author of more than 21 novels, including the international blockbusters The Nightingale, The Great Alone, as well as Winter Garden, Night Road, and Firefly Lane. Kristin's latest novel, The Four Winds, debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. The Four Winds has been described as epic and transporting, a stirring story of hardship and love, majestic and absorbing by USA Today. People magazine has called it a spectacular tour de force that shines a spotlight on the indispensable but often overlooked role of the greatest generation of women. Kristin's breakthrough novel, Firefly Lane, is currently #1 in paperback trade fiction, and its TV adaptation is the #1 Netflix series worldwide. The film of Hannah's much-loved novel, The Nightingale, published in 43 languages, starring Dakota Fanning and Elle Fanning, is slated for release in 2023. Her 2017 novel, The Great Alone, has also been optioned for the screen. Kristin is a former lawyer turned writer who lives in the Pacific Northwest with her husband. She can't imagine a better career than writing every day and doesn't miss practicing law or wearing heels to work. Kristin writes because it frees something in her and allows her to be a wife, mother, and friend. The friend, the wife, the mother that she wants to be. Kristin's work touches millions of people. Her novel, Firefly Lane, became a runaway bestseller in 2009, a touchstone novel that brought women together. And The Nightingale in 2015 was voted a best book of the year by Amazon, BuzzFeed, iTunes, Library Journal, Paste, The Wall Street Journal, and The Week. Additionally, the novel won the coveted Goodreads and People's Choice Awards. The audiobook of The Nightingale won the Audiobook of the Year award in the category of fiction. Her #1 New York Times bestselling novel, The Great Alone, won the 2018 Goodreads Best Historical Novel of the Year and appeared on numerous best of lists. Renowned for her strong female characters, Hannah's books are read, discussed, and revered by book clubs all over the country. Kristin Hannah, thank you for joining us this evening, and I really want to give a very warm Pueblo, Colorado welcome to you today.
Well, thank you. It's wonderful to be here. What a great program this is already.
I mean, I think our community and I have a million questions for you. So the first one I'd really like to ask you is, we've really enjoyed your books over the last month or so, but I understand that you haven't always been a writer or considered yourself a writer. Can you just start this evening by telling us your story? How did you become a writer, and how did you become a published writer?
Gosh, that's kind of it's a long story because I've been doing this a long time. But to go back to the, sort of my origin story, as you pointed out, I was a lawyer. And I was in my final year of law school when my mother was at the end of her battle with breast cancer. And so I was spending, all of my days at the hospital after classes. And one day I was complaining about one of my law school classes, and she said, "Well, you don't even have to worry about that. You're going to be a writer anyway." And it was the most remarkable moment because I had never written a word of fiction. I had no interest in it. I was, of course, a huge reader. My mom, we all went to the library at 6, and that was the beginning. Books constantly in the house. And so, she knew sort of my sensibility. But, for her to think that I would be a writer was remarkable. And at that time, I was really young, 25, maybe 24, something like that. Anyway, and so she said we should write a book together. And so, being mother and daughter, we immediately sort of started arguing about what kind of books to write. And I wanted to write horror. She wanted to write historical romance. And so basically she said, "I'm sick, I win, we're writing historical romance." And that was kind of the beginning. Every day after class, I would go to the library and stand in the stacks and make Xeroxes because there was, of course, no internet then. You had to actually go and make Xerox copies of the pages from the historical books. And we would, sit and just imagine this book. We plotted it, all of that. And after she passed away, I just put all of that material, the idea, the talking, the research, I put it all in a box and just filed it away. And, went on with life. I passed the bar and started practicing law. And it wasn't until a few years later when I got pregnant with my son, and I had a difficult pregnancy and ended up being bedridden for many months, that I sort of thought about this writing thing. And so I pulled out this box that had all this material in it, and kind of like a gift from my mom. And I just thought, I'll write a book. How hard can it be? And I thought I would, do this until first grade, that I'd give myself 5 years to try to get something published. And if not, I would go back to the law. And my first book was published when my son was 2. So I've been doing this ever since.
Wow. That's such a cool story. Just curious, horror was your first genre that you thought of? I mean, can you talk about that?
Well, I'm a total geek, basically. I'm a huge Stephen King and horror fan, and have been since I was in high school. Big fantasy, big epic, Tolkien, all of that. And it just, when I was in my 20s, my early 20s, it just seemed that's like a really cool thing to do. And I still read a lot. I read a lot of horror, read a lot of thrillers, I read a lot of fantasy. And ultimately, when I decided to actually pursue a career at this, I was, as I pointed out, a young mother, and I didn't want to live in the headspace that horror required. So I think that's why I let that one go.
That makes a lot of sense. So I guess, thinking of that kind of headspace that you have to live in while you're an author and you're trying to write these things, many people that I've talked to who have read The Four Winds and other of your books just can't get over how viscerally they feel about the settings and the events in your books. I even had one woman that said, I can literally taste the dust when I read the book.
Yeah.
So, can you talk about the details in your story and tell us about your research process and how you get into that headspace to create such creative settings and events that are just so vivid?
Well, that's an interesting thing. And I think that it actually interestingly relates to my love of epic fantasy and this idea of world building. I have always loved really immersive fiction. And so when I, sort of turned my head towards historical fiction, it felt really important to me to really put a reader in the middle of all of this and make you really understand what the Dust Bowl meant and what the Great Depression meant and what this generation we call the greatest generation actually endured. I mean, you guys probably have a lot of people in your community who remember this time period. And so, for me, it was really important to be not only as accurate as I could factually, because that's obviously the starting point, but also emotionally, and also, sort of in the broader sense, to take a modern reader and put them into someone else's shoes. Because I think that's one of the great gifts of all kinds of fiction, this ability to create empathy, to let you actually understand what somebody else has experienced and how they feel about it and what it did to their family. And I think, sometimes empathy is missing in the world today. And so any book I think that can bring people together, it's worth doing. And with regard to research, I begin globally with what's happening in the world. Why am I interested in this? And I just research until I find a story that I would say I haven't read before, that hits me on an emotional level and has something to say about the modern world. That's what I'm looking for in historical fiction.
So, I guess I just kind of imagine you sitting maybe in a library, in a park somewhere on, the eastern plains of Colorado in the middle of kind of a dusty field, riding the Four Winds. Do you visit these places? Like, how do you get so into them? Like, I really want to know that setting process.
Well, just as a small aside, if you're going to imagine me writing, the former lawyer in me is still around, and I write all my books longhand on yellow legal pads with a certain pen. And the reason I do that is it's because I can do it anywhere. I can do it on the car, on the beach, in my backyard. I can write anywhere and everywhere. And that is, to me, one of the real gifts of being a writer is I don't go to an office every day. I don't, sit at a desk every day. I'm very much, I guess, more creative and a little bit freer in that regard. And I guess, I don't know. I just follow the historical thread to a story that is super compelling. And when I read what the people who lived in the area that's called the Dust Bowl endured, I was astounded. And, that hadn't even really been raised in my high school. And so I just thought it was so important, especially with issues of climate change going on right now and, some of the divisions in our current country. It just seemed like a really relevant story to bring back to the fore, and to do it from a feminine perspective is something that's very important to me, to sort of pass along lost women's histories to today's readers.
And I read an article about kind of your process where you still keep, I can't remember if it's 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 hours to make sure that your creative process stays intact. Is that true?
I do. I mean, it's writing is very much a passion for me. I do it more than I have to. I work more than I have to. But it's also a job. And I think that there's a lot of sort of mythology that comes with writing and a lot of terminology that sort of equates it to magic or something like that. And I'm a firm believer that you have to sit in the seat, you have to put in the work, and then the ideas will come to you, and then your creativity will sort of be unleashed. And so I spend a lot of days, like other writers, sitting in the chair, writing stuff that nobody will ever read or will ever want to read, but somehow it gets me to where I'm going. And I'm also a very editorial writer. So the first draft of the book often bears almost no resemblance, plot or characters, to the book that's actually published.
Wow. Yeah, and with your kind of editorial process, I also read that you have a box that says, "Do not publish even after death."
Well, actually, that is the book that I wrote sort of with my mom. Oh. So it's that very first book, that historical romance that I thought, oh, how hard can it be? And wrote, in sort of one long, breathless stroke, and had no idea what I was doing. And, at the end of it, when I realized that it was not good enough, that's when I sort of had to have a real serious talk with myself and realize that when you set out to become a writer, you are accepting this challenge, or at least you were in those days, that you may never be published, that you could pour your heart and soul into this year after year and never be published. But I think what I learned ultimately is, and a lot of people have learned this through journaling or, other ways of writing, the writing itself is so transformative sometimes. And I say often that I don't go to therapy because I write. And that's basically, I get to work out all my issues through imaginary people. But it's really transformative just to spend your time reading and writing.
That's awesome. We actually, in our Booklovers Ball kits that people have at home, we gave everyone a gratitude journal so that they can do exactly what you're talking about, is use that as kind of a catharsis and write their feelings and write what's going on in their day and the good things. So that's a great, I'm glad you said that.
That is so important and valuable. And not only that, I think, because I meet people all the time who say, I have a story to tell, I want to be a writer. And not everyone necessarily is going to become a novelist or a successful published writer. But that does not in any way diminish your ability to tell your own story, and to get your own story down on paper and to pass it along for your children. And I think one of the things that's so important about historical fiction and books like The Four Winds and The Nightingale is they can encourage intergenerational conversation. And I would love it, if young people read the book The Four Winds and then asked their grandparents what they remember of that time, what was happening in their lives, and sort of allowing the generations to connect through history.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point of this All Pueblo Reads program is, you hit the nail on the head. You almost said our mission statement.
Great.
So, Kristin, we know, or as you know, we featured The Four Winds as part of the All Pueblo Reads program, and we did focus on mental wellness, specifically perseverance and gratitude. The Four Winds, and many, if not all of your books, just like really talk about or have characters who display courage and must endure really trying situations, tumultuous times, and they display characteristics of perseverance and gratitude. Is this intentional, or can you kind of tell us about why or how you add these themes into your books?
Yes, I mean, it's fully intentional. And it's because I think it's so important. I mean, I don't know that I went into it with the knowledge that I now have about it. I think in some ways I kind of stumbled my way through writing and allowed my writing to sort of reflect my life and my thoughts and what I believed in. And that's kind of what people call the author's voice. But what I have come to, I guess, in as I've gotten older and look around a little more and pay a little bit more attention to the world, I see that all of us, in some way or another, are faced with incredible challenges and struggles and difficulties. Life can be really hard, and this is a particularly difficult time, in our country right now. And so I think it's really important, crucial, in fact, to remind people um, to look for things to be grateful for, to be reminded of gratitude, to consider others' points of view, and to really sort of join together and help each other with the issues that we're facing. I mean, the last couple of years with COVID have been so difficult for so many of us, and the idea of lending a hand and being aware of other people in distress and looking for your own center. I think they're all just really important conversations that are really coming to the fore now, and I am really glad to see that.
You know, I know that there's a quote that I've read from you where you talk about to endure something truly hard. That's when you need friends and support the most. Can you talk about the importance of relationships, friendships, different relationships that you have with the characters in your book, maybe specifically the Four Winds, and why you do place focus on those relationships and those friendships?
Well, I mean, it's another thing we all learned, through COVID again. You spend a couple of years when you're not being able to see your best friend or your mom or your dad or your brother or your children or your grandchildren, and you realize that sort of being solitary, being isolated, is really difficult for one's mental health. And what that means, I think, and what I've learned throughout that, and since that, is to really focus even more on friendships, on family, on doing things for other people, getting out sort of into the world, because as a writer, I can live a pretty solitary life, and I think it's vital that we connect in that way. And I think you'll see through the Four Winds, for example, the character of Elsa, who begins very isolated, very low self-esteem, very unhappy, and it is really through motherhood and becoming having a mother-in-law who really changes her and impacts her. It's these relationships that teaches Elsa her self-worth, and in finding her self-worth, she finds her voice. And I think that's a very familiar arc for women. It's very easy in a million ways to lose your voice over the course of your life. And I think it's important for our children and our grandchildren that we women speak up and that we say what we have to say, and we come together. And I think a lot of my books sort of reinforce that message of community, especially community of women.
Absolutely. And do you, coming out of the pandemic, and I think that your work is very pandemic friendly, we'll say, staying at home. staying at home probably wasn't very hard for you, or riding on the beach wasn't probably very hard for you. But I know a lot of people are coming out of the pandemic feeling very alone, feeling very isolated. Writing, researching, using that kind of method that you have of writing. Do you have advice for those people? And if they were, I guess, a character in your book, how would you write them getting out of this kind of mental alone situation?
I would say that it's like sort of overcoming anything that is difficult or frightening in life. It is really easy to sit back and do what is comfortable and not put yourself out there and not take any risk. And that, I think, is further isolating. So what I would say to my characters, what I say to myself, what I say to my son is, if you want something in life, and you certainly should, then sometimes you have to put on the big kid's pants and take a risk and put yourself out there and approach someone that you don't know, or go somewhere to a meeting or something, even if it frightens you. I think something actually like your community book read. I mean, this fact that you have all of these people now who are reading this one book, and it will speak to different people in different ways. And I think it allows a dialogue through fiction, which can also be the beginning of a book group, of a friendship. I've been really amazed as I toured the country sometimes, where women who are in line, waiting to come up and get a book signed, will actually strike up a friendship while they're waiting. And by the time they get to the front of the line, there are 6 women there who didn't know each other before, who are now starting a book group. And so I think anything like that can get you talking to someone you don't know and keep you talking to someone you do know, is the way to become stronger and healthier and more comfortable in your own skin.
That's great advice. And, kind of a great plug for the public library as a community forum for people to meet other people, find resources, and just connect, right?
Absolutely.
Well, we're getting questions in from our audience. However, before we do that, I would really like to talk to you, about some of your adaptations to the film, to the screen, I should say. And we all love Firefly Lane in print and on Netflix. And I understand that your book, The Nightingale, has been adapted into a movie. And, we want to know, how has it been adapting your books into a movie or a television series? And, the big question as bookies is that, well, bookies not in terms of that we may place bids on things, but that we like books. Did you feel like you lost anything doing the movie or the series version of the books, or do you feel like it enhanced your stories? We'd love to hear from you on your perspective as a writer.
That's so interesting. I can say, unfortunately, with The Nightingale, it got stopped by COVID and they haven't started filming again. So I don't know where that is. I was supposed to go to Budapest and be on set last year, and that couldn't happen. So I was really disappointed about that. They have a beautiful script, and I think the Fanning sisters are amazing. So on that front, I'm really, like everybody else, just looking forward to see what they've done with it. But, it's sort of to the broader question of adaptations. I see a lot of that online and comments about it and questions. And I guess what I think is the most important thing is to remember, for me, the author, for the reader, for the viewer, for everybody, to just remember that they're 2 different art forms. And, we all want the movie to be as good or better than the book. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. So I think that what you really want is a a show that captures the heart and soul of a novel and maybe even improves on it. I mean, there's certainly, I've seen scenes written of my material that I didn't write that I wish I had. So, I'm basically like everybody else, just a fan and hoping that it all goes well.
So speaking of you kind of as just a fan, I'm really curious, what was your initial reaction when Firefly Lane first aired? Like, what did you kind of fangirl or did you critique it? Like, what was that like?
The most interesting thing about that was as I was watching Firefly, Firefly Lane is a book that's very autobiographical for me. This is the first time I've ever really not only taken on my own life, but sort of publicly done that. And this is about my high school, my junior high, my college years, my mother's cancer, all of these things. And so when I was watching it, the thing that struck me most was they had like completely recreated my house. And it was so bizarre to see my 13-year-old bedroom because I hadn't even remembered that I had done that in the writing, but there are my posters and there's my bedspread. And I thought, wow, this is really interesting. And then of course I wondered, what do my siblings think? What do the friends from high school think? But everybody seemed happy.
Oh, that's great. So then when you moved to the Nightingale adaptation, I know that that's still in process, but were you already kind of a hardened pro after working with Netflix, or was that just as exciting but in a different way?
Well, it's interesting. The difference between TV and motion picture is so different. I mean, I had been working on the Nightingale 3 years before the Firefly Lane people ever even approached me to adapt it. So it just moves really fast. The TV series part. I mean, I can tell you that when Katherine Heigl and Sarah Chalk were cast in Firefly, I was thrilled. And I worked quite a bit actually with the producers of the Nightingale and gave notes and had some input. And I think they have created a stunningly beautiful script. But I don't know what I don't know what happens next.
Well, we will just wait with bated breath
Yeah.
In a lot of anticipation, because I know in this community, that's a very popular book. So you'll have a lot of viewers from Pueblo, Colorado come to that opening.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Me too.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of kind of, waiting with anticipation, can you talk about the release date for season 2 of Firefly Lane? When can we expect to watch that?
I actually know this now. December 2nd.
So coming up soon.
Yeah. So everybody can go. I think it's Netflix, so you can put it on your watch list or whatever, and it will tell you, so we can all binge on the same day.
And, I obviously read the opening kind of statement introducing you, but in the opening statement, we mentioned that The Great Alone had an option for a movie. Personally, this is my favorite book of yours, so I'd like to selfishly ask if you could talk a little bit about this exciting news.
Yeah, I am actually really excited about The Great Alone. It's, it's moving forward. Like I said, it's a very slow process, all of this. And then, COVID and the confusion sort of in Hollywood and on set, for a couple of years was really difficult. But it's allowed us, I think, to get to a place where we really have a good script on Great Alone. And so now we're just looking for what comes next. I think I don't know actually if it's a series or if it's a film. I think they're thinking film. And I really try not to have a lot of creative influence. I like to be respected. I like to be spoken to, but I'm pretty clear on the fact that what they do isn't what I do. So it ultimately comes out to me making comments based on both being a fangirl of these kinds of books and on my understanding of story, and if I think, they've missed the boat somehow. But I can't wait to see Alaska on the big screen. It's just such a stunning landscape.
Well, I mean, the way that you portray the setting of that landscape, I mean, it's going to have to live up to that, I think, in
I
a
know.
lot of your readers' eyes.
Well, and as you know, that it's a big part of my family history, Alaska. My the family business is up there, up in Sterling, the Great Alaska Fish Camp, and so it's a very important and beloved place to my family and me.
Well, speaking of your fans and your readers, we have a few questions that I'd like to read to you and have you
Okay.
answer. So our first one, it says, at some point while reading through all of Kristin Hannah's books, I noticed that her novels really transitioned into historical fiction, which I love. How and why did you transition to the genre?
Well, so I had written about maybe 10 contemporary women's novels about various issues and themes and settings, and the issues that were confronting women of my age at the time. And at some point, I just realized that I had something else to say, something bigger to say, and I didn't really know what it was, but I was reading and I was doing some research, and I came across the Siege of Leningrad, which was this World War II and this really difficult time in World War II in Russia. And I came across the sentence, Leningrad became a city of women. And I thought, well, there's a story. And so that was really the beginning. It became a book called Winter Garden, and it was half historical and half contemporary, really only because I was a little frightened to transition fully. And it took a while for me to make it. But while I was researching and writing Winter Garden, I came across the story of a woman named André Dujon, who was a young Belgian woman who she and her father created one of the first escape routes out of Nazi occupied France for downed airmen. And that obviously was an incredibly compelling story. And it got me reading more and more about that. And so in the years following Winter Garden, I began formulating what would become The Nightingale. And by the time I got there, the story for The Nightingale was so compelling that I basically said to, my editor, my agent, my husband, everyone, we're going to bet the farm on this. And, if it kills my career, it kills my career. But this is a story that I want to tell. And so I just jumped into historical fiction. And once I got there, I just have found increasingly additional stories to tell. I don't know how long I'll stay here or how much longer. I know my book for 2024 is historical again, but I don't know from then on.
So, I'm gonna pull a question that we received on YouTube from Autumn Whitaker. And what Autumn asked is kind of on the same thread of vulnerability, courage, and self-worth. How do you handle the vulnerability of putting your work out there? I mean, you just sound so confident about putting these stories out there, how you're talking about betting the farm. I know that it has to be hard in a lot of these cases to put your stories out there for the world to enjoy, but also critique.
Yes. And of course, when I started, you would get a couple of reviews, magazines, newspapers, that sort of thing. But in the old days, I didn't know what anyone thought of my work except for, the few readers I met and my agent, my editor. But obviously, in this social media age, it has become different. And now there's really a forum for everybody, to say what they have to say. And I actually find it fairly interesting. I guess by the time I am done with a book, and have edited it and done really truly the best that I can do, and then put it out there, by the time the reviews start coming out, it's a year or 2 years later, and I'm on to something else. So I think that helps a great deal. And also, I have sort of gotten to the position where I don't read reviews, if I can help it, good or bad, because I don't believe the good ones. I only believe the bad ones. And so it's better for my mental health in the context of this conversation, not to read them. And the other thing is that is part of the job I've chosen. You know, I have chosen to put myself out there in a sort of creative and incredibly vulnerable way. So you have to find whatever path it is that allows you to do what you want to do, and not be sidelined by good reviews or bad reviews, because in the end, it's really about you and your readers and what you have to say.
Wow. Just I feel like a very mentally mature way to approach this. Like, I
I'm
think you
old. Honestly, I will say I am grateful that I did not come of age as a young writer in this social media time. And I think one of the most difficult things that can happen for a young author is to have a book that's incredibly successful, because it's, you know, that the web can be pretty dark in what they have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a couple of questions about your characters. So can you talk about how you give your characters their personalities, temperaments, their overall characterization, and how do you choose, how do you just choose their overall personalities? Like they all have such distinct personalities when you read through your books. And so I think we'd love to hear your process.
Well, okay. So when I was a young and inexperienced writer, I would write reams and reams of auto or biographical information on every character, because I thought and was told that I needed to know every single thing about my character, and, you know, everything they believed in, everything they thought, their life experiences, and I would need all of that to create a character. And what I discovered over time was, a person may have all of those characteristics, but a character really cannot. A character has to be a little bit more streamlined. And so I kind of evolved over time into allowing, how do I say this, what I have to say in a book. So, for example, The Four Winds was really about a woman finding her voice and surviving an incredibly difficult time and drawing strength from motherhood and from family and community. That's really what I had to say. So when that's what you have to say, the character who stands in at the beginning and tells the story can be just about anything. And when I said earlier that my books change a great deal over the course of time, it's because I am trying on characters and pasts and backstories to see which one best tells the story that I'm trying to tell. For example, in the first year of The Four Winds, the first couple of drafts, the characters of Elsa and Loretta were sisters-in-law. And it wasn't until I really started honing what I had to say that I realized motherhood was more important than sisterhood, and redrafted the story. So I just keep editing and writing and letting my characters talk and letting them experience hardship and seeing how they survive. And then I look at that against what it is I have to say, I guess.
And so along that same kind of vein, your characters go through so much. I'm thinking about when Elsa first comes to the San Joaquin Valley and the flood and just the terrible things that people say and how they react to her. How do you develop or how do you, I guess, formulate the situations that they endure and come out on the other side of?
Well, how I create them is the easiest part of the whole thing because it's all historical record. There is, there's nothing in the Four Winds that didn't come from a memoir or a newspaper article or somebody talking about their life at that time. So really, it's a question then of picking and choosing which ones I want to do and which ones will give the reader the best possible understanding of what was happening. Like I remember reading a memoir about the Dust Bowl and the bugs and the centipedes were coming into the house to get away from the weather outside. And I just thought that was such a powerful and visceral kind of image that I thought, oh, well, I better make a scene around that. And that sort of is how it happens. I just come up with all these things that would have happened, and then I basically show you a character who loses everything and finds a way to claw her way back to not only health, but confidence and happiness as well.
And one of the questions that we received in, I think, is a great follow-up to this. And the question is after researching and writing the Four Winds, do you think that people were stronger then than we are now? Or are we just facing different challenges and it's just a different time?
I think that's an interesting question because I turned in the final draft of the Four Winds in March of 2020. About a week after Seattle went into, full on lockdown, and there were lines suddenly for gas and people were hoarding toilet paper. And I was looking at the news and I was thinking, boy, there's so much here that feels like that time. I mean, obviously the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl were exponentially more difficult physically, I think. But I don't think it's really about strength or resilience. I think it's about community. I think that we need to, come together more as communities and take greater care with each other and, stop looking so much at what divides us and look a little bit more at what unites us.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are good. Those are really great advice. We have one comment from Doreen Martinez, and this invitation is everyone here. We will treat you well in Pueblo, Colorado, if you want to come visit us.
I would love to. Thank you, Doreen.
And she's very correct. We have a very historically diverse city with a ton of characters and a ton of history. So we'd love for you to be here.
Thank you.
Doreen also says, Vivian is my favorite character that you have written, which is in The Nightingale. And she would like to know, how do you relate to her?
Well, obviously she is the character that I relate to in the Four Winds. And in fact, as I mentioned earlier about my own personal therapy, the mother character in every book is, whether it's Firefly Lane with Kate or Elsa or, Vian in The Nightingale, I very much am that character because I have been historically sort of unable to, I think, widen my net about motherhood. I'm so invested in it personally that I tend to write about it, and it means so much to me. I will say that I thought, Cora in the Four Winds was kind of a departure for me because she made choices that I think were incredibly difficult and harmful to her child. And even though, she wanted to be a good mother and she loved her mother, I think it was difficult for her. And that was a difficult character for me to write.
We talked about this, me and a couple of our coworkers, about how well you write teenagers. And, I'm not going to lie, there were a couple books that were tough for me to get through just because you could embody teenagers so well.
Yeah.
You embody motherhood really well, but is there a story behind how good you are at writing teenagers?
Well, I raised one, and quite a few of the books that tackle teenage issues were when I had, a teenager in the house. But it's also something that I remember. I was very much, like we said earlier, the library kid. I was, we moved around a lot. I went to a lot of different schools. I often didn't quite feel that I fit in, and I always had my nose in a book. And so I think that it made me both, I guess, an observer of life and of my fellow teens. And I think also, too, at the time I was reading a lot of Stephen King, and he is particularly good with kids. And so I think somehow the connection was kind of made in me, pay attention to this stuff. These are important times.
Yeah, I love that Stephen King came up when talking about writing about teenagers. I think that's perfect.
He's so good. I mean, with kids in general, he's so good.
Yeah. Well, kind of diverting from this a little bit, but still sticking with your characters. You mentioned this earlier, but this question comes to us, and the writer says, as an archetype, men have traditionally been the main character or the character that overcomes challenges or afflictions. You make sure that females are strong and central. How or can you answer how or why do you see this as important for your female characters to be the champions in your story?
Well, because we've been overlooked for so long, and you look historically. I mean, look at the Four Winds, look at the Nightingale, look at Winter Garden. I mean, I could go on. There are so many remarkable historical stories about women. I mean, frankly, the women of World War II are now, everywhere in books and on film, and it's because so many of these stories have not been told. And I think it's really important, again, for our children, for our grandchildren, for our daughters, to understand and to be told from their earliest age, you can be a hero too. You can be courageous. You can be whatever you want. You just have to fight for it. And I think that's it's just an important message. And not only that, it just makes for really good reading. I mean, these characters who, men at war historically have told a certain kind of story that's very different in many regards than the stories, of women at war. I mean, the Nightingale is about a woman living in a home just trying to keep food on the table for the most part as the world, collapses around her. And, when I was on tour for the Nightingale, I heard from so many, grandmother age women who said, I have never talked about this. I've never talked about what happened in France. And, now I'm giving your book to my children so that they understand what I went through. And again, that opens, the intergenerational dialogue. And, it's so hard. You look at the older people in your family and you don't understand their stories. And I think it's so important that we tell them. And the more we read about them, the more it sparks conversation.
So we have about 3 more questions that we were going to ask before our evening concludes. But the next one that I think would be great to ask after what you just said about your characters is, were there books, female characters female role models that you had growing up that influenced you?
Oh, that's really interesting. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that. Um, I mean, honestly, when I look back to the books that were, formative, um, they were pretty much all, Sam and Frodo male protagonists. But what I loved, and Lord of the Rings is a perfect example of the kind of book that really impacted me in my youth, and I think still impacts me in my writing today, because you're talking about um, deeply drawn world building, where ordinary people are faced with extraordinary circumstances and rise to the level of becoming heroic, regardless of the personal cost. And that is still, my favorite kind of story. I remember when I was in my 20s, I think, Anne Rice was one who began introducing some powerful female characters in The Witching Hour and books like that. And I just remember being, amazed and sort of compelled to read them. And now I think it is honestly becoming, I mean, I don't think it's that big of a deal anymore, frankly. Um, and that's a good thing.
Well, our next question comes from Jen Rudnick. And Jen would like to know, regarding your research process, do you spend about the same time researching for each book, or less or more for any given genre or particular novel?
Yeah, Jen, research is book specific. There are books like The Four Winds, like Winter Garden, like Nightingale, for even Firefly Lane, that were really big research undertakings. Novels like that generally take me a full year just to get the research right. And then as I write in the next year or two, there's more research as I hone and realize what I didn't look up the first time and need to, or what I'm going to use and didn't think I did. Books like, say, The Great Alone, or Night Road is another one, that really are much more somehow related to my own life or my own history or my own location. Those books will take less research. And so I try, I try to not do one heavy research book after another if I can help it. I try to kind of break it up a little bit. But now that I'm going 3 years between books, I'm really looking for the big researched epic story every time.
Great. And, I hope that all of these questions about your process really make you feel and understand that I think a lot of people really love your books, and I think your formula, or maybe formula is not the right word, but kind of the layout of how your books are. I think that this, for me, shows a lot of respect for you as a writer, that they just want to know how you make this magic happen.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And then our last audience question comes from Amy Nelson. What would your advice be to new writers who struggle to balance their current work lives with their passion to write? Was it hard for you to take the leap?
Amy, that is such a great question. My son is, the father of 2 small children, and he has a passion for writing, and is trying to write novels now, or is writing novels now. And I'm very, very aware of how difficult it is to balance all that. And frankly, the work-life balance is so important, and time with your family and time with your friends, all of these things are so important. But something has to give. If what you want to do is become a writer while you also, while you already have an otherwise full life, then you have to make some fairly serious concessions, and you just have to choose that you will do this at whatever rate you can do it. Like I remember when my son was really young and I was writing, I was getting up at 4:30 in the morning so that I could write from 4:30 to 7 o'clock when he woke up. And and as he grew up, my writing schedule completely was based on him, so that I could still do all of the field trips and class things that I wanted to do. I was very fortunate that I didn't work. I think it would have been, it's almost impossible to balance all of it. But what I can tell you is I have a lot of friends and I see it all the time. If you make the choice and if you write consistently and take classes and read and learn what you can learn, there's 1,000 things on the internet to teach you. You can get there. You just have to actually commit to it, even if it's 1 hour a day, 4 days a week. You just keep doing that. And writing is like building a muscle. The more you use it, the better you become at it.
Thank you for answering our viewers' questions. And viewers, thank you so much for putting your burning questions in for Miss Hannah. So as a kind of our parting thought, what I would like to just kind of ask is, can you tell us what your next project is, or what can we expect to see from you in the future?
Well, I'm just finishing the book that will be coming out in, I think, February of 2024. Finishing, there's a lot of finishings that go on in this career. It's another historical novel. It is not surprisingly about a woman, who comes of age during a very difficult time, and has to struggle to find out who she is and what kind of a life she wants to make for herself. I know that's horribly general, but that's the best I can do right now.
But between now and then, we have season 2 of Firefly Lane.
We do,
and maybe more on the horizon with The Great Alone and The Nightingale, right?
We hope so. Yes.
Great. Well, Kristin Hannah, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much. This has been just wonderful and fun, and it just makes me really want to come to Pueblo and see this amazing new library that is almost done.
We will welcome you with open arms and a VIP tour, so just let us know.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. This was great.
Yes, thank you. And this year, we have celebrated the 4 Winds and many other Kristin Hannah titles, as well as many other mental health titles. Our community was a fan of Kristin Hannah's work before we featured her as our 2020 All Pueblo Reads author, but our fandom of her books has grown exponentially since the start of this program. And since announcing that we are providing free copies of Kristin Hannah titles to anyone who would like a free copy of one of her books. I want to extend a very warm welcome to Pueblo, Colorado for Kristin whenever she's here in Colorado, and we'll welcome her with open arms. Kristin, again, thank you so much for joining us. And that concludes our program this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a very exciting event tomorrow. We have the Public Author Talk, and tomorrow at 6 p.m. we will be holding 2 live watch parties. One will be at the Rawlings Library, and one will be at the Pueblo West Library. At this event, you can hear from Kristin Hannah, who will be answering additional viewer questions. You can pick up a free copy of one of her books. And again, these watch parties are tomorrow at 6 p.m. at the Pueblo West and the Rawlings Library. Be sure to stop by and pick up a free copy of your favorite Kristin Hannah book. This concludes our evening, and we look forward to seeing you all in person at the 2023 Booklovers Ball. Thank you for joining us, and have a great evening.